You want any accounts of raisings from the dead?
Oh yes, please. Yeah, that's the big
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Uh, so my one account that I have, it's not the most dramatic, but for reasons that you'll soon understand, this is one that I always like to share. Um, I had heard this story before from my wife, uh, but when we went to Congo, and my wife helped me interview Antoinette Malambe, who shared in more detail how when her daughter Therese was about 2 years old, she was bitten by a snake. She wasn't breathing, as far as the mother could tell. There was no medical help available in the village. I mean, obviously, we should use that when it's available, but there was no medical help available in the village. She strapped the child to her back, ran to a nearby village where family friend Coco Ngoma Moise was doing ministry, and Coco Moise prayed for the child. The child started breathing again. The next day, she was fine. I asked Antoinette Malambe, how long was it that she wasn't breathing? She said, um, she had to stop and think. She said about 3 hours. Now, 6 minutes with no oxygen, irreparable brain damage starts in. But Therese has no brain damage. Uh, she later went to uh, get her master's degree in Cameroon, and she just recently retired from ministry back in Congo. Now, this one got my attention not because it's the most dramatic, but because Antoinette Malambe was my mother-in-law, and Therese is my sister-in-law.
Wow.
And not to doubt one's mother-in-law, but we did confirm it with Coco Moise as well, who was the eyewitness. Um, but also we have these reports from doctors. For instance, Chauncey Crandall, cardiologist at West Palm Beach, he signed the death certificate for this man. You know, they'd spent 40 minutes trying to revive him. He'd been flatlined just about that whole time. And normally, if a person's flatlined after even a few minutes, you don't get a normal heartbeat immediately. At least that's what Dr. Crandall tells me. I'm not a cardiologist myself. But he felt led to pray for this man to have a second chance to know the Lord. He prayed for him and did, you know, as a responsible physician, he also does what he can do. They shocked him one more time, and suddenly the guy has a normal heartbeat. Now, he tells me the guy was not just dead, he was very conspicuously dead. His extremities had already turned black from cyanosis. So his face was black, his hands were black, he was a white person. And so, you know, suddenly he's got a normal heartbeat, and the nurse starts screaming, Dr. Crandall, what have you done? Because, I mean, all the systems had shut down. You know, surely he has irreparable brain damage. He had no brain damage.
Wow.
And he did have a second chance to know the Lord. This doesn't happen, obviously, very often, but yeah, he's a believer now, and now they travel and share the testimony together. Another example is from Sean George, who's a consultant physician at Kalgoorlie Hospital in Australia, and he himself went into cardiac arrest. He was flatlined, I think, for an hour and 55 minutes. So, you know, his wife, also a physician, Sherry Jacob, got there. Some of his colleagues were, you know, they did their best, but they said, just say your goodbyes because there's nothing more we can do.
Yeah.
And instead, she cried out to God, and suddenly the heart monitor sprang to life. And they were like, well, we better do what we're supposed to do as doctors, but this is scary because, I mean, his brain dead. I mean, he should be brain dead, but his wasn't instantaneous recovery. He was unconscious for 3 more days, but when he woke up, he read his chart. He had no brain damage. He's back to work, and his colleagues, you know, some of his colleagues are Christians, but also Muslim and Hindu colleagues. All of them agreed this is a miracle.
Wow.
And lest anybody think, oh, this is just, you know, people just do this in the corner. We don't have any evidence for this. He has the defibrillator logs and the other medical documentation publicly on his website. So, I mean, I did correspond with them, but it's right there in the open. So these things are there if people really want to look. You can say, well, they don't happen all the time. No, the things that happen all the time are what we call the ordinary course of nature. That's God's general divine action.
Yeah.
But for the special divine action, no, they don't happen all the time. That's the point. There's something special to get our attention, is a foretaste, a reminder that God is going to make things right. A day is coming.
Absolutely. I've got a friend, and he had a very remarkable story. He's never been used by God in healing before, but there was an elderly lady, end of life, in the bed, and he just wanted to go in there and just pray for her that somehow God would reveal himself to her in her last moments. And he relates the story that he just went into the room, placed his hands upon her chest just to pray and say, God, please kind of reveal yourself to her. And he said all of a sudden she sat bolt upright in bed and jumped out of the bed and began running around the room. He said it absolutely terrified him because he had never experienced anything like that before in his life. And he hadn't been a Christian for very long. But he relates that, and he said, why did God do that? And I said, well, Rob, his name's Rob, I said, God is showing you that he's alive today. He performs miracles, signs, wonders and miracles today. And I don't know if that lady became a Christian, but just, miracles do happen. And they happen more often than people kind of care to realise or care to mention. I think especially in the West, if a miracle occurs, a lot of people tend to keep it quiet because they're frightened of the stigma that's attached to it. What will people think if you start believing in miracles?